Hi everyone, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Just let everyone come on board for a couple of minutes before we get jumped in. Let's see who we've got on board today. Let me know if you can hear me okay. John, you're welcome. Glad to have you on board. Jean, a regular, hi to yourself. Good to have you join me today. I feel a lot better today, thankfully. So hopefully my my voice won't be as croaky as it was for last time. And so this topic today is going to be on WordPress emails. So it's not a frequent topic, but certainly something that comes up every now and again. I discussed at meetups and with clients as well. So we'll just wait for a few more people to join. Who do we have here? Susan. Hi, Susan. Good to have you back again this week. And Paul, another regular, loud and clear. Thanks, Paul, for letting me know. FEQ Business Training. Hi, Jane. Hope you guys are doing well. Anyone from Victoria? Anyone in the lockdown just now? Let me know. I feel sorry for all those Victorians. Hi, Damien. How you doing, mate? Alan, a regular. Good to have you on board. Okay, we'll just get another minute or so, and then we'll dive into it. Joey, nice to have you on board again. Joey, good to have you, and Damien as well. Hi, Damien. Okay, let's jump into this one. I think there we go. Make it big. Oh, did you guys hear the intro, by the way? Did the music come across? Let me know in the comments below. Just something we're just experimenting with just now, having little intros, just trying to do different things with the broadcast to make it a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more professional, if that's even possible. Okay. Nice intro. Thanks, Jean. So it did work. It's difficult to tell with because I got everything muted here because you don't want feedback to come through the microphone. So that's great. Thanks for letting me know. Susan just logged in. That's okay. That's okay. I'll play it next week. You can let me know. Okay, let's get into this. I don't want to waste anyone else's time. Right. So welcome to WPQuickies series. So these are bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. And today we're going to look at how WordPress sends emails and how we can change the default behavior of WordPress to do that. Why you'd want to do that and basically how. Okay. Yeah, so before we start, please click on the subscribe button down below and click on the bell, and that'll make sure that when we do broadcast, you get a little notification when we're online, just in case you miss the emails that come up. Okay, so roughly what we're going to look at today is how WordPress sends emails. This is going to get a little bit technical. I've tried to make it as beginner level as possible, but I really want to explain the process of how WordPress sends emails out so that you get an understanding as to why you would want to maybe bypass that and use something else. So in that explanation, we'll talk about maybe why some emails can go missing sometimes. We're going to look at something called an SPF record, and you might not know what that is. You might never have heard it, but that's okay. We'll cover that today. And then specifically, we're going to look at a WordPress plugin called WP Mail SMTP, which is one of the most popular plugins for sending emails out from WordPress. So let's dive in. Just done a couple of hellos. Alex heard some music. And Lynn says hi. Hi, nice for joining us, Lynn. Thank you. Okay, so how WordPress sends emails. So I did a little PowerPoint stuff a couple of days ago, and I've not used animations in a while, and I thought, yeah, let's use some animations and jazz things up. So apologies if your eyes bleed, but I was having a little bit of fun, so hopefully you do too. Okay, so we're talking about WordPress, and we're talking about WordPress sending emails. So obviously we're going to have like a WordPress component in there. So the first part of this is obviously WordPress. So when WordPress sends an email, what it does is it uses a function, a WordPress function called WP_mail. Now you don't need to know what that is. If you don't do any PHP programming, that's okay. I'm just kind of mentioning this so you understand the top level process of how WordPress goes about sending an email out to the big bad world. Okay, so we have WordPress. It uses its own native WordPress function called WP Mail. What that does is it's actually a wrapper for a PHP function. Now, PHP is a language that WordPress runs on. So I've kind of stacked them under each other so you kind of see where the process is going. So you've got WordPress in the top, which runs on top of PHP, which is down below. So when WordPress sends email from that WP_mail function, it has a PHP function underneath it that's wrapped around that. And it uses something called fsock open. And I'm not going to get into that, but basically it's a way of opening a connection to a mail server or any other server. So when it's passed to PHP, PHP does that connection, and it basically sends that information to the server machine. Now, the web server can be a virtual server, a VPS, or it can be an actual physical server. But when I'm talking about server machine, I'm talking about the machine that's running your WordPress web server, the MySQL server, and everything else on that machine. So we're at the machine level here. So I've moved from WordPress down to PHP, down to the machine level. Okay, so when the machine is starting to look to send emails, it looks up some records that it has on this server, and they're called MX records. And it's in the DNS of the machine, and it's basically mail records. There's all different types of records that a machine can have with DNS. We call A records, which links to the web server, and there's text records as well that you might use to connect with Google and other services. But for mail, the server needs to know where to send its email to, and these are detailed in the MX records or mail records for that machine. So in this process of sending emails, we've gotten from WordPress down to PHP, down to the server. The server needs to know where to send emails, so it looks up this information in MX records. And then it sends that information to something called a send mail, which is a server service, a daemon, we call it. And that's the server service that's responsible for actually sending that email out from that web server. So we've gone through that whole flow. So once it's got to the bottom there, usually what you'll find is that email is sent from that WordPress web server. The web server that's running WordPress on it, it's sent out from that server into your hosting company's email system. Now, it could be like multiple servers, it could be hardware, but basically, you know, the web hosting company will have their own internal email servers that process the emails that go through the system. So they'll be looking for things like spamming, they'll be looking for malware, they'll be looking for virus scans, all that sort of stuff that happens. But eventually what's going to happen is the hosting company themselves, they're going to have some sort of service that sends it out into the internet. So we're calling that here the hosting company email service. So we've got the the hosting company email system, which is all the servers that handle the routing of the email. But eventually it comes to the end where it needs to pass it out to the internet. So we're calling that the hosting company email service. And then that passes that out into the internet, which then sends it to the receiving mail server. So that's the rough, very, very basic high-level method that WordPress sends out emails. So from WordPress, it goes through PHP, it then goes down to the low-level machine. The machine has records as to where it needs to send it in the next chain, which is done by a server service called SendMail usually, which sends out to the internal hosting company's email system, which routes it all the way through to the end service, which is responsible for sending out to the internet, which then hopefully gets to the receiving mail server. So let's look at points of failure. So the reason why we're looking at this topic today is to understand why sometimes WordPress emails fail. Okay, so let's look at the structure again. This is the whole structure laid out here. So what we're going to assume here is that WordPress, PHP, and the server are running, okay? So we're not going to include these in a point of failure, because if your server goes down, then it's not going to be able to send out emails anyway. So let's assume for this talk that WordPress, PHP, and server are all up and running, and so they are not going to be a point of failure. Okay, so let's look at different areas where emails can get can go missing. So the first one is MX records. So if you're ever on your web server and you probably log into like the hosting company, you might have cPanel or Plesk or some other way to manage the server process, like control panel and things like that, FTP users. There's also an area called DNS zone or advanced DNS zone, and that's where the server itself keeps all its records as to where it needs to go to look at the web server, the mail server, and all that sort of stuff. So it could be that the MX records on that server are not configured properly, or you might have went in and tried to change things. So that's definitely a point of failure. So we're talking about the web server that hosts WordPress. When it comes to sending emails, MX records might not be set properly, or they could be misconfigured, or they could be corrupt, or whatever other reason. But that is definitely a point of failure. And if that server doesn't know where in the next chain to send the emails, then the email is just going to sit on that particular server and not go anywhere. So certainly a point of failure there. Another point of failure could be the SendMail service. It could be something else, but it's usually SendMail. So that could have stopped. It could have crashed. And that's quite common. Things do crash in servers. You can have the web server crash, you can have the database server crash, and yes, certainly the mail server can crash for whatever reason. So that definitely could be a point of failure. And again, we're still in this orange stack where WordPress lives. So if the send mail server goes down, then again, the emails are going to sit on that web server and not go anywhere. So certainly a point of failure there. A third point of failure could be the hosting company email system. So this is where it's been passed from the server that WordPress is sitting on, and it's now within the internal email servers for the hosting company. So what could happen here is the hosting company could have virus scanners, it could have malware scanners. So your email could go through to a particular machine and it could hit a false positive. So one of the scanners, the hardware within that hosting company, could look at your email and think, oh, well, you know, that attachment looks a bit dodgy, or the content from that looks a bit spammy. It might not be, but it could generate a false positive. And that could mean that it's redirected to an admin, or it could be redirected back to the WordPress machine for whatever reason. In effect, it's a point of failure and it could get lost. Okay, so that's definitely a point of failure there as well. Another point of failure as well is once it's left the hosting company, and it's went to the email service that the hosting company uses to then send out to the internet, the same things could happen. So it could be like an IP blacklist that could look at the machine and blacklist your email from sending. It could again be malware or virus scanning software that's looking at that particular email and it thinks it's a bit of a dodgy email, or again it could be a false positive. But definitely again a point of failure. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4 points of failure that your email could just sit there and not be sent out to the internet. But let's just say it goes through all the system and it does get sent out to the internet. The last point of failure could be actually the receiving email server. And the point of failure here could be something called an SPF record. And that's what I want to go into next. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because I want to get back into the alternative methods of sending emails. But I think it's really important to understand why these emails could fail. So we're assuming here that emails went out of the hosting company. So it's left WordPress, it's left the hosting company, it's out on the internet, and it's actually being received by the recipient's email server. So let's have a look at this SPF. SPF stands for Sender Policy Framework. And it's basically a way of the receiving server to query that email that comes in to make sure it's coming from a trusted source. So in this graphic here, excuse me if I take a swig of tea. in this graphic here, we've got somebody, and it could be your own WordPress server, but just say it's somebody else just now, called Bob, and they're at mybank.co.uk, and there's their IP address, 116.21.116.6. So they send out an email. It goes to the email server on number 2, which then that's the recipient server. So it's went through the whole company, and this is the recipient server on number 2. What it does is it says, well, I've got this email from Bob, and here's his IP address, and he claims to be from mybank.co.uk. It asks the DNS server, give me your SPF record, and I want to know which IP addresses are allowed to send on behalf of mybank.co.uk. And that DNS sends that information back, and it's saying, look, I only trust, or you should only trust IP addresses 1.2.3.4 and 2.3.4.5. Those are the only IP addresses that are allowed to send emails from @mybank.co.uk. Everything else fails. So in this particular instance, because Bob is on 116.21.116.6, the IP address, that's a fail because it doesn't match those 2 IP addresses that are allowed to send emails on behalf of that domain. So in this instance, it's going to be a fail, and it's going to go into junk mail or somewhere else. And this is what could happen within your WordPress environment. So the WordPress server that it's sitting on is going to have an IP address. And if for whatever reason that IP address is not included as an SPF record, it could, when it gets to the recipient, and this is the last point in the chain, fail. Okay, so it could go into your junk folder, and therefore the recipient doesn't find it. And that's all to do with this SPF framework. So here's a couple of examples of what you would do to combat that. So this is like the manual approach. You would go into your DNS on the WordPress server, the web server, so into cPanel, into Plesk, and you go into the DNS settings and add what you call a zone record. And you're basically it's a text record. So you can see on these 2 examples here, the text value is a very specific command. So it's v equals SPF1 space include colon, and then you put the IP4 address of your WordPress web server, and then a little squiggly tilde, and then all. You can, of course, use DNS. So the one on the left is for IP, and the one on the right is for the DNS. They basically do the same thing, and you can include as many IP addresses in there as you want, just separated by space. And all you're basically saying is, within that DNS record, you're saying that these IP address, these servers are allowed to send email on my domain on behalf of this email address domain, top level domain. Okay. So hopefully that you kind of understand how all the different points of failure can happen, and especially when it gets to that end point, the recipient's person. Because I get clients that come back to say, oh, I've got this email that goes into junk, or the person hasn't received this email. So the first point of call I usually do is to go into the DNS, like their main DNS, have a look, see if they've got an SPF record, and then go into their WordPress server, the cPanel, and again, have a look at the domain name, the zones within that server, just to make sure that it's specifying that the IP address of that machine is allowed to send emails on behalf of that domain name. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of overview as to how emails are sent through WordPress, through PHP, through companies' systems, through an external system, and again, the final check with the recipient's email address and this SPF record. It is a bit technical, and developers can probably help you. And certainly the hosting company will be able to set up SPF records for you as well if you're finding issues with emails. Okay, so there is an alternative way of doing that, and you can use a plugin. The most popular plugin is WP Mail SMTP, and I do have a link here. I'll just copy that and put it into the comments down below. There we go. And so this plugin, the graphic here, and the plugin effectively bypasses all that orange stack down the left-hand side and the hosting company and hosting company's email service. And it just works on the WordPress level. So when you install this plugin, it's going to override the WordPress mail function and use its own functions. And it basically sends directly out to whatever service you want to configure with the plugin. So you're bypassing the at least 4 points of failure. You're bypassing the MX records, the send mail service, the hosting company system, and whatever end service they use to send out to the email system. Now, it might not bypass the SPF. You might still get an issue. However, it's kind of rare when using this plugin, because you're actually, when you install this plugin, you're sending from a known email service directly out into the internet. So it should be all encoded properly. It shouldn't have the IP address issue, because it's not really coming from the server. It's coming from your external service that you're configuring with the email system. So let's have a quick look. Yeah, so it bypasses all that stuff, and so you're simplifying the whole process of sending emails out. So this is the plugin here. So it's WP Mail SMTP plugin. It's totally free, and it's on the WordPress.org plugin repository. So I'm just going to stop my screen just now, and I'm going to share out a tab which should have the plugins in there. Let me just see. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. I'll just check my screen to make sure. Yep, that looks good. In fact, I'm going to make that full screen just so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I've got the WP Mail SMTP plugin installed. Now, there is a free, obviously the initial version is free, but then you do have a paid version as well. So you've got some services that you get for free, and then some you have to pay for. But in general, there's not a lot of settings, and this is why it's really quite popular, is that it's really easy to set up. So in the general settings here, you have a from email that you want to be sent out from. You really should be using the domain name that matches the WordPress instance, just to make things really simple. Like, don't put your Gmail in there or some other crazy domain. Make sure it matches the WordPress website that you're sending it from. You can have a from name as well, and that's what comes in past the email address in your inbox. And down the bottom here, you can see the particular different services that are available. So by default, it is going to use PHP. So when you install the plugin, by default, nothing will change unless you configure it. So it's just going to use PHP, the same initial graphic that I used, that WordPress sends PHP, goes to the server. So it's nice in that you install the plugin, it doesn't change anything straight away. You've actually got to make a change in order for something to change, if that makes sense. Okay, so here are the options. You might not have heard of some of these, but they're definitely really kind of popular email sending services. Some are paid, obviously, and some are free. So one here is SMTP.com. Again, that's an email service. So you'd sign up with them, maybe pay for them, and then here you get an API key from your settings and a sender name as well. So very, very simple to send from that. Peppy Post, I've not heard of them. But again, all you require here is an account with them. Go into your settings and find your API key, and they'll be able to set you up with that. Copy that in, and you're all good. And it really does make this whole system really, really, really easy to do. So Sendinblue, and that's quite a popular one in the States for sending emails. But I guess the real big popular ones are Mailgun. Mailgun I use with my clients quite a lot. I used to use SendGrid here, but SendGrid's SLA, their uptime, is 99.9, I think. And Mailgun is 99.99, which means you're getting that extra uptime of guarantee. So I like to use Mailgun. It is a paid service, but you know, when you're sending out emails with these services, they're really, really low cost. Like, you're talking a few cents per 1,000 emails that you send. So it's not going to break the bank unless you're sending millions of emails at a time. And again, very simple. So once you sign up for something like Mailgun, in the back end in your dashboard, you'll have your API key from there. And look, there's instructions here. It says get private API key. You click on that and it'll take you out to documentation. It'll show you exactly where to get that key. The domain name that you've configured with Mailgun, which will be your email domain name. And you can choose some regions here as well, which that's really more for GDPR, for the European protection laws that you want. So it doesn't really matter for us from an Australia's point of view where you want to send emails out too much. So definitely Mailgun is a free one. SendGrid as well is quite popular, but you can use AWS, so Amazon. It is a pro feature, so you need to upgrade this plugin to get access to that. But to the Amazon SES mailer, and that's like really high volume emails for real low cost. So you're definitely worthwhile checking that if you're going to be a high volume emailer. Gmail, which is probably the one that most of my clients will use, the freelancer clients. So more than often or not, people will have like a Gmail account set up. It could be a free Gmail, or they could be using a G Suite as well. And it works with both because they're basically the same system. So this is the one that I use personally on my websites. So again, there's a documentation here, and it'll tell you all the steps. So click on this link here, and it'll tell you all the different steps that you need in order to populate these fields here. But essentially, you're going to need an API key, which is a client ID and a client secret ID to pop in there from your Gmail account. Once that's done, you'll save setting, it'll authorize. And then when you're sending out emails from WordPress, it will send it through your Google email account, which is great. Now you can do the same for Microsoft, but it's a pro account. So you need to upgrade this plugin. But if you've got some other system, just say you've got another legacy email system that you use, so you don't want to pay for anything else, you've got it all set up, then you can use this plugin to connect to that. And here it's very simple. It just asks for the host. That could be the DNS name or the IP address. If you want to use encryption, SSL or TSL, then it sets the port number equivalent for that, or you can use your own port number. And then you just have a username and password to connect to your service. So this plugin really does cover all those basics, and it really it bypasses that whole WordPress server trying to send emails out and all these different points of failure. So I would highly recommend that you switch over from using WordPress natively to send emails out to this service as well. It's going to really simplify things, and it's going to make sure that emails get to where they are on point all the time. There's a few other things in here. So there's an email test. And so once you've configured the plugin, obviously you want to make sure that it's sending stuff out. So there's a quick test here. You can just send a test email for that, just to make sure it's running through this external service. There's an email log as well. I think this is a pro version. Let's just see. It's a bit slow because it's running on a development server. Yeah, so this is a pro version. So if you want to keep email logs within your WordPress system, then that would be an upgrade, a pro upgrade. I would suggest maybe not keeping logs, especially if you're a high volume emailer, because that's just going to be more stuff within your WordPress database and tables that's going to slow down your website as well. Email controls. Let's have a quick look at what's in here. Okay, so this is a pro version as well. And this allows you to change notifications that are sent to you as an admin as to different things. So maybe an email has failed and you want to send an email to yourself to say that these emails have failed. You can do that. And you can do reporting and change the way that emails are sent on a kind of a role and an admin base as well. So if you want more control over how emails are sent and who gets notified, you can upgrade to the pro version of this plugin. Let's have a look at the MISC. Okay, so some systems, excuse me, some systems like, and it's telling you here, BuddyPress and Events Manager, they have their own email system. So they actually bypass WordPress's WP mail function. They have their own way to send emails out. So you can disable those emails and try and send them through this plugin itself, and it'll try and do that. You can hide announcements, you can hide delivery errors as well. And again, there's a check here for getting rid of everything if you want to uninstall. So I really like this plugin because it's super simple. There's not so many options that you can go wrong. You just basically set your email address, choose which service you want to use, like Gmail or SendGrid, configure that, save it, and that's it done. Send a test email, and that's you basically done, and it works. And I've had no problems, no dramas with my clients setting up these. for all the different services, as opposed to other clients who have tried to send stuff just using WordPress, and then again they get into that situation where emails go missing, people don't receive them, and they're like scratching their heads to go, well, what's happening in this instance. Okay, let's go back to a PowerPoint. There we go. Put me on the screen. Yeah, so we did the demo there. Well, let's go back one. Let's go through a couple of questions before we hang up today. So let's see what are we missing. Sersa, hi Mike, good to have you. We have a question here. So, set up SPF record for webmail, for instance, but need to set up separate SPF records for MailChimp for WordPress if send emails from WordPress. Correct. Okay, so, and this is about where, I think, if I get this right, this is about where you set up your SPF records for. So SPF records, they're going to be set up on the servers that your email is going through for your DNS. So there's usually two areas that you want to set up the SPF records. One is where you have the company you've registered your actual DNS records for your domain and for your email. So you want to go in there, and it might be separate from your WordPress hosting, and usually it is. Usually some people register their domains with a different company. So you want to go in there and definitely add an SPF record for your WordPress server. Get that IP address in there to basically say, yeah, this IP address is allowed to send emails through for that. The second one that I would recommend is actually going into the WordPress machine itself, the control panel, the Plesk, going into the advanced DNS zone editor within there and adding an SPF record into that as well. And that just means that you've got both points there. So you've got when other email systems within the company's hosting system are looking at the emails coming through from WordPress, then yes, it's going to look and say, I trust that, and it'll pass it through. And when the email gets to the recipient's email address, it will then do a DNS lookup to your actual DNS, where it is in the DNS company. And again, you've got the record there for the SPF. So, so yeah, two places I would recommend setting up the SPF record: on your actual DNS and on the WordPress server that's sending out the emails. And hopefully that clarifies that one, Jane. Thanks for that question. That's good. Will, where can we find zone configuration? Right, okay, so that is in control panel. Let me just see if I can bring up a tab here. Control panel and DNS zones. Let's see if I can get a picture about where that particular thing is. Oh, there's one in Plesk. Let's see if we can find a control panel. Okay, right, let's, I'll see if I can share this. Stop that screen and share another one. Chrome tab. There we go. So I've just done a quick share of my screen. Susan, I'm just looking at my laptop to make sure it's coming up with that. Let's put it on full screen, I think. Full screen. So here's a little picture here. And so when you're in cPanel, you want to go down, there's a quick access, and in there'll be DNS settings. There'll also be a little box that probably says DNS settings or zone settings or IP settings. And within that, then you'll find there's what's called a zone editor. And that will allow you to change the settings in there. So hopefully that answers your question there. Let's see, there's one in Plesk as well. In Plesk, there's websites and domains. So there should be a tab called websites and domains. And in there, there'll be a DNS record. and you'll be able to see all the records down there. So in Control Panel, in Plesk, if you can't find it, then there will be a search feature in cPanel and Plesk, and just type in DNS or type in zone, and you'll be able to find it there. Good question. Okay, Jean's asking about DMARC records. I don't really want to go into DMARC just now. That's a little bit more too high level. I think if it doesn't work with zones, with SPF, then I think you've got a bigger problem in the whole trust issue with sending the emails through the system. So maybe we can chat about that offline. But yeah, so definitely if your emails are not arriving and you've got SPF already working, then yeah, you've got a bigger trust problem within like the DNS issue there, Gene. Alan, a couple of quick questions. Honorary Secretary for Society, sounds good. We have 200 members, most of Australia. First question below. Okay, all right. So he sends a monthly bulletin with our website. I send more than 20. Every one after it gets bounced. I think that's because it's spamming. Also has Hotmail account and allows 100 before blocking. Yeah, so this is quite a common problem. It's when you have like a newsletter within WordPress and you're sending out all these emails. Basically, what I would say, I know we're talking about using this WP Mail SMTP plugin to send out emails, but like wind it back a little bit. I always advise my clients not to send out emails using WordPress. I know this is what the whole talk's been about, but in general, I would say if you're going to be sending newsletters and bulletins, I would move that off to an actual email system like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or Campaign Monitor, and get them to do all that stuff, because they look after this kind of blocking and blacklisting and spamming. So for example, if you're sending out 200 emails using one of these types of services like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, they're not going to blast out 200 emails or 2,000 emails. They do it in a batch system. So they'll maybe do like 10 or 50 at a time, and then they'll switch server and move another 10. So they've got this whole thing covered. And also their IP addresses will be registered with the major email recipients like Gmail and Outlook to know that it's coming from a trusted IP. But when you start blasting emails out from WordPress, then yeah, you do run a really high risk of being marked as spammy or junk or just getting completely banned at all. So yeah, I would suggest that you try and move that stuff off the WordPress web server into a proper email campaign system. And you can still use WordPress as like the base. So you can use things like Zapier and along with Gravity Forms or Ninja Forms to collect that information and then put them on the appropriate list within your email system. So hopefully, Alan, that answers your question, that first question there. Will the plugin allow me to send my 200 emails in one go? So again, that kind of goes, I'll stick with my first answer. If you're sending any more than like a dozen emails from WordPress, and I would think about moving that off to an external system that really just does send emails on its own. Joey, for mailer option, choose Gmail rather than default PHP, increases deliverability. Yes, yep. So when you're choosing these external systems like Gmail, like SendGrid, like Mailgun, their whole system, I mean, their whole business is sending emails. So they've got things in place to mitigate the receiving services to mark them as spam or junk. Usually they've got like agreements with their IP address between these big companies. They just trust them. But they do other things like load balancing. That's what I was trying to describe before, whereas they'll send emails in batches from different servers to make sure that they're not tripping any incoming flags with all these incoming services. So yes, I would say in general, if you're sending emails out from WordPress using PHP, you're more likely to get on a spam or junk list than if you're using like a professional service. So definitely have a look at things like Gmail, G Suite, SendGrid, and Mailgun. They're really cheap. They're not going to cost an awful lot. And usually you'll find if you sign up for the basic plan, you'll get like a minimum number of credits per month that you can send for free. Then anything over that, you'll start incurring a cost. So there might be like up to 2,000 or 5,000 free emails. Well, not free, but emails included within your subscription plan per month. And it's not a lot. It's not a lot of money. So let's see if there's any other questions. I think that's it. Okay. Any more? One more. Alan. So he's already set up a MailChimp account but hasn't started using it. Yep, definitely. Maybe I can do a quickie on connecting to email systems. If anyone's interested in doing something like that in the future, I can do one of those. Maybe go through maybe the top 3 and how to connect to them and collect your email addresses. If anyone's interested in that, yeah, please let me know. I think that's it, really. So next week we are covering multi-site. So very, very high level overview of what multi-site is, what it's used for, some use cases you might want to use it for, and some use cases where you probably don't want to use it for. So if you're thinking about using multi-site, if you don't even know what it is, join me next week, and I'll try and go through the very basics of that. And again, please fill out a form. Let me know if you want to do any other quickies. Give me some topic suggestions and let me know. So there's a QR code there. The link's in the YouTube description down below. So you can click on the link there. And yeah, send me some comments. Let me know if these are useful and send me some topic ideas. That would be great. That's me. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. And say hi in the comments. Leave a little note as well to let me know where you're coming from. Yep, and that's it. Thank you guys for joining in. Jean, Susan, Alan, John, everyone else. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll let you guys get back to your lunch because I went a little bit over this week with emails, and I shall see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.